With One Piece Chapter 1113, we have the reveal of Punk Records, the Straw Hats versus the Five Elders, and Dr. Vegapunk's stunning revelation to the world. The color spread for this one features Robin playing chess with her fellow Straw Hats as the pieces. All of the pawns are Chopper, Frankie and Jinbei are rooks, Zoro and Sanji are knights, Brook and Usopp are bishops, Nami is the queen, and Luffy is the king. St. Marcus Mars had finally made his way to the world's largest brain, Punk Records. Vegapunk's broadcast continued. The doctor admitted that although his coffee is still a bit too hot to drink, he believed that by now, everyone had received enough time to prepare for his video broadcast. Shaka let him know that there were only 30 seconds remaining. Pythagoras started feeling a bit of stage fright, knowing that the entire world would be watching. As if they haven't been watching these guys brew a cup of coffee for the last few minutes. Mars looked up and wondered at what he saw, something that was able to persist even after Vegapunk's death. He wondered if this was Vegapunk's true self. Then we finally see it! Punk Records in all of its glory. The colossal dome piece within a colossal dome piece. The top of Dr. Vegapunk's head. Mars wondered what death would even mean to something like this. He wondered if Stella's consciousness was even within it. This is definitely one of the craziest devil fruit abilities that we've ever seen. The transponder snail relayed Stella's reply to Pythagoras, that eventually their recording would be broadcasted to the world, as it is right now. Through Denden Mushi, he admitted that he takes pride in the connection, but revealing the truth is also a major burden. St. Mars then hovered a boot over the poor snail. Just when you think that these guys couldn't get any worse. I mean, who would hurt a Denden Mushi? From there, we move over to Syrup Village, the East Blue hometown of God Usopp. The former Usopp pirates were disappointed to learn that Kaya didn't have a video transponder snail, despite seeming to be the only person in the village who would. Mary wondered if the boys knew how big a video snail actually is. Apparently, they're bigger than the average house pet. He then left to prepare some tea. Usopp's homegirl Kaya told them that Dr. Vegapunk is a medical legend as well, something she likely learned from being sick in the past. But she definitely looks great these days. Piemon claimed to already know, but Ninjin called him out for lying. Meanwhile, Tamanegi wanted his friends to pay more attention since this was such a big deal. The Marines at headquarters were preparing for the broadcast to properly begin too. At Twin Cape, Crocus and Laboon listened with a regular transponder snail too. After that, we ended up in Baltimore, Dr. Vegapunk's hometown. A child wondered if the Great Doctor had truly been born on their island. Keaton's grandfather confirmed this, and called Vegapunk the pride and joy of their island. The kid believed that Vegapunk was responsible for the nightmare of Baltimore, but the old man let him know that it was actually Frankie's fault. If you forgot, he pushed the self-destruct button inside of Vegapunk's old lab since he thought it was a pirate button. The geezer also heard a rumor that the cyborg had turned himself into a ship. Then, he wondered just how many years it had been since he'd seen Vegapunk's face. We then find ourselves in the Birdie Kingdom of all places. This is a South Blue island where Chopper spent the time skip. One of them believed the broadcast to be about the island where Chopper is. Janba recognized Vegapunk to be a king of modern science, who is also responsible for the creation of many weapons. Over on the pirate island of Hachinosu, it was business as usual. Even with the good doctor's declaration on the way, there were still civil disputes to be dealt with. Vegapunk spoke to the entire world, and had them all on the edge of their seats. Back on Egghead Island, before the Elder could completely crush the snail, its large shell broke, and revealed the truth. Thank goodness. The broadcast continued, as this was just a regular Denden Mushi. This wasn't a hiding place at all. It was an intentional decoy. Overtaken by rage, St. Mars broke away from Punk Records in his giant Itsumade form while cursing the doctor's name. Stella opened up with a greeting. Shaka let his senior know that he'd already done an introduction, but Vegapunk already knew that. With so many people now tuning in with video, he decided to do so once more. But with all that out of the way, it was finally time to begin. The people of the Long Arm tribe rejoiced with clear curiosity. Elsewhere, a little boy emerged from a tent, wondering what was going on. A woman let him know that a very important man would be making an announcement, and told him to go back to bed. St. Marcus Mars became a bit flustered when his peers wondered what the hell he was doing since the broadcast was still going on. He apologized and again cursed Vegapunk. The doctor was far more prepared than they gave him credit for. There was no way for them to stop the broadcast. And wow, the smartest man in the world prepared a solid plan. Who would have guessed? Mars continued to say that they have no way of knowing how much Vegapunk really knows or what he plans to say. But he reminded them of York's words, that Stella intends to carry on the torch of the Ohara scholars. Each of the elders paused in grim recognition of their unfavorable circumstances. This would not be a repeat of Professor Clover's deductions and final words. This would be a follow-up. Vegapunk plans to finish what Ohara started. Meanwhile, Dr. Vegapunk's unconscious body was still being carried by Sanji. While racing through the flames, Sanji wondered if the doctor could hear the cries of a girl in danger. He then knew for sure that Bonnie needed him. As she and the others came into view, Sanji noticed the elder with a sword raised above them and wondered what he was. The elder proclaimed that they would not allow Bonnie to claim their military power for herself. Frankie stood between her and the monster and told Bonnie to get back. But to interrupt this heroic attempt was Sanji, who intended to save the day instead. Using the black blade as a springboard, Sanji kicked the mythical monster in the jaw and managed to draw blood. Sanji keeps sneaking in these feats with blazing feet. He didn't care if it was an old man or not. This is a pirate's fight. But instead of speaking, the elder's head erupted into flames. While T-posing, the skeletal head of a giant horse emerged from his body and bit onto Sanji until bones began to snap. This is a very unique application of Zoan abilities. It's almost like an intentional malfunction akin to the Smile Fruit users. But thankfully Mr. 4 tossed Stella before he could be hurt too. Bonnie called out to Sanji in fear of his injuries. Just then, a giant saw the commotion and began heading in their direction. Over the broadcast, Dr. Vegapunk confessed that he had committed two major sins. Oimo and Kashi both grabbed hold of Nujuro in an attempt to restrain him. In doing so, Sanji was released. And again, thankfully, Atlas managed to catch her creator's body. Bonnie began to call upon the power of her Devil Fruit's distorted future ability. Several Marines noticed as she leapt into the air while enlarging herself. With the power of a giant future, she became massive and planned to stomp down on the Elder. Anger and frustration shifted his expression. Della told the world that he expects to soon be killed for his sins. So the message they're all listening to was programmed to go out immediately after his heart stops beating. The people of Sabaody cried out in dismay as they realized that this must mean that the great scientist is already dead. Sanji's former lookalike, Duval, which is still one of the funniest jokes in One Piece, couldn't believe it. After all, the fact that Dr. Vegapunk was being held hostage by Luffy's crew was all over the papers just that morning. Vegapunk's biggest haters were in an uproar too. Caesar held back tears as he refused to accept Stella's death, especially since he and Judge just teamed up in order to finally surpass him. This is like Endeavor after All Might retired. Morgans really wasn't a fan of the whole video snail broadcast thing since it threatened the future of his newspaper empire. Usually, he's the one breaking the big news to the people. Before properly beginning, Stella really wanted to make something clear to them all. Something he prayed they would all understand. He told them not to assume that the ones who ended his life are evil, regardless of who they seem to be. He had no intentions of discussing right or wrong with this broadcast. At the same time, the Straw Hats up on the Labostratum were dealing with the sudden appearance of Saint Saturn. He too spat venom when mentioning the doctor's name. Stella claimed that he was unqualified to judge such things, and does not know enough about him anyways. So in terms of interpretation, this may be received by the public as a statement about the world government or about the Straw Hats. The distinction of him may very well be the subtle mention of Imu, which may also be seen as Luffy depending on the resulting narrative. But for someone in the know like Saturn, this insinuation was more than enough to invoke his fury. Now, because Stella's message isn't connected to any sense of morality or judgment, things like the empty throne being filled may not have a place here. So with that, we can sort of consolidate our expectations. Saturn began rushing forward in a hurry. He told the Straw Hats to get out of the way since he doesn't have time to deal with petty insects. But Robin was stunned when she heard his voice. It was the same voice she heard back on Ohara. Saturn recognized her as a child that the foolish Akainu let slip away. Robin immediately knew that she was looking at one of the 5 elders. Nami wondered what the monster was talking about, but quickly rationalized as one of the spider monster's long appendages rushed in their direction. With a desperate outcry, Nami told them all to protect Robin. This even caught the attention of Zeus. They all sprung into action to keep Robin safe. I am a big fan of weaker characters holding their own against major powerhouses. I am a big fan of Nico Robin. And I am a big fan of Nami using Zeus like this. For me personally, this scene was the highlight of the chapter. But the big revelation is coming up soon. Dr. Vegapunk knew that what he was about to say would be hard to accept. He even believed that some people would consider him a fool. Mars was shaking with panic and frustration. There were too many life forms on the island for him to sense any unique telepathic waves. So there we go, a bit more insight into the Itsumade's sensory abilities. Vegapunk York was racking her brain to figure out where Stella may have hid the broadcast snail. She feared that if things continue like this, she wouldn't be allowed to become a celestial dragon. What's interesting to me is that York didn't know about the recording of this broadcast at all, as if she did, the elders would have known about it in advance. But given what she knows he might say, it's apparently severe enough to threaten her deal with the Gorosei, despite the promise of the Mother Flame. Oda is really hyping this message up. With all that being said, Stella believed that he had a responsibility to tell the entire world about a certain issue. The Gorosei continued to speak with one another telepathically. Again, Mars wondered if they should just destroy the power station to stop the broadcast. But Saturn completely shut that possibility down. Besides losing many Marines, an Admiral, 9 Vice Admirals, warships, equipment, Seraphim, and 3 generations of pacifistic units, they'd also be sacrificing their access to the Mother Flame, the use of which their Lord Imu greatly desires. But then, Dr. Vegapunk decided to get down to business. The One Piece world is going to sink into the ocean. Marines looked up in disbelief. We then received a shot of a few mermaids swimming alongside a whale and several schools of fish. And they said the revolution would not be televised. It looks like the fishmen will finally have their time to shine. And the Skypeans are probably drinking mimosas right about now. If you have a devil fruit, please make your funeral arrangements in advance. Maybe this is why the Celestial Dragons like to wear fish bowls on their heads, along with why they secured the absolute highest point on the planet as their home. There's also the Ship of Promise, the Ark named Noah, which is obviously a rendition of the biblical ship Noah's Ark, which was said to be used in the face of a cataclysmic flood. And the destruction of Lulusia, causing sea levels to rise, certainly didn't help. I really want to know what you guys think about Dr. Vegapunk's global warming reveal, so please let us know in the comments.